So I'm going just the opposite. I didn't print any agenda, so again, it's pretty wide open. I mean, I certainly have ideas what I would cover, but again, feel free to use it up. As far as the attorney who spoke, I'm not an attorney, but I was president of the Estate Planning Council, veteran attorney a few years ago. I worked with the first ever estate planning attorney in town. So I'm very familiar with all those topics. So if there's any questions from what we talked about, I could probably at least interpret. In fact, I was joking with Bill, there's another attorney in that same firm that I refer a lot of clients to. And I always go to the first meeting with my clients with the attorney. And I always feel like a language interpreter. You know, the attorney will talk for a few minutes, then I'll say time out. Then I turn to my client and say, what he said is, what the important thing, you know, so that's really the key. And I'm going to touch on one thing that's really important when I'm talking about that. But first, any general questions? Anybody really want to know anything about specific? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about first is types of investment risk. You know, that's what people really think about when they first start an investment program is okay, how risky are you? And the first one, market risk, is one that everyone thinks about. Yeah. If I buy something, can I lose money? Is the market going to go down? And obviously, we've all experienced that in the last year. You know, stock market's down, bonds have dropped. Your investment bonds, because bonds move in opposite direction of interest rates. So market risk is really the biggest one that everyone thinks about, and certainly is important. But the other 8 on this list are equally important, and a lot of people really don't think about them or focus on them or consider them in their investment strategy and building their portfolio. So the next one, just as important, is liquidity. And that can be as simple as, you know, if you've got a big expenditure coming up a year from now, can you put your money in a 2-year CD and then say, holy cow, a year from now you need that money out, but you got to have to get it out. You know, so you got to think about liquidity. What's it going to cost you to get your money out of that investment, and when can you do that? So some investments have no time limit. When you buy a stock, you sell it tomorrow, so it's liquid. But CDs obviously have some time period. Annuities, a lot of things like that, have a surrender charge for 5 years, 7 years, something like that. So you really have to consider that when you're looking at those type of investments. Is when you're going to need your money out. You know? So when we're designing a portfolio, we always look at that time horizon. Like if someone says, well, we're going to retire at 65, you don't want to have a lot of investments in there that they can't get money out until they're 70 or 72 or something like that. Okay, next one is concentration. And this one may not affect anyone here, but I see this. This is probably the single biggest mistake I see with a lot of clients in the Detroit area. That work, especially work with the auto companies, like especially Ford. See, Ford employees are so in love with their company, they keep buying all this Ford stock, and they end up literally with like 90% of that worth in Ford stock. And I'm not knocking Ford, a great company, but no matter how good the company you work for, you want all your assets tied in with that company, okay? Because you don't know what's going to happen. And that's, in fact, you would know some people. It's actually hard for me to convince them to start selling some of that Ford stock, you know, because they love it so much. But it's like, you need to diversify. Okay. Next one is credit. And that mostly has to do with bonds, if you're buying corporate bonds. So you need to look at, and you'll hear Moody's or S&P bond, like AAA is the highest, meaning that it's very, very safe. AA, A, that goes out to the B's. And even the triple B's and double B's are going to be pretty good. But once you get below that, then you have a real risk that that company that's issuing that bond will not be able to pay that off. And it also happens with municipalities for municipal bonds, which are tax-free, which can be great because you're not getting taxed on the interest they pay you. But you got to look at the credit rating of the city or the state that's issuing it. And not to pick on Detroit, but a few years ago when Detroit went bankrupt, they actually did default on some of the bonds, meaning that the people that own those Detroit bonds didn't get their interest. Okay. So something to keep in mind, especially in the bond market. Reinvestment, this was not as much, but like right now, a lot of people are buying CDs because interest rates have come up. You know, so you get 4%, 4.5% one-year CD, which is best we've had in years. So a lot of people are starting to think, okay, I could put money in there, I can live on this 4.5%. But when that bond, when that CD matures, are you going to be able to reinvest it at the same interest rate? We don't know what interest rates are going to be a year. They could be higher, they could be lower. They could go back to, we had almost zero interest rate for some years. You know, so that's the question. Next one, and this is the big one that we've all been talking about for the last year, but you know, for several years prior to that, no one talked about inflation. Inflation is huge. Inflation is huge. You know, at the rate that we've had for the last year, the value what you can spend your money, what your dollar is worth, drops in half in like 15 years. So you really have to, again, in constructing a portfolio, you got to look at, okay, I don't, you know, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to take any market risk. I don't want to take a chance of losing any money. But this is actually just as dangerous as far as losing money as what inflation is going to do to your portfolio. So if you get too conservative on your portfolio and say, okay, I only want investments that don't have any market risk, then you run the risk, because the trade-off is you're going to get a lower return. Okay? If you're not taking any market risk, you're going to get a lower return. Long term, you're not going to keep up with inflation. So, again, in the portfolio construction, we try to diversify. And it depends on where you are, you know, what you want your objectives are. But you don't want to go too far in any one of these directions, you know, to mitigate any of these risks.
Okay. Randy, related to that, could you talk a little bit about, you know, as we get older, get closer to retirement or retirement,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people tend to get very conservative related to that.
Mm-hmm.
But it becomes a little bit of a risk there from an individual standpoint, because we're seeing people live to be 90, 95, 100, in excess of 100, right? I'm starting to know a lot more 100 plus people.
Yeah.
And so if you retire at 62 or 65, you know, 30 to 40 years is still a long time. That's kind of what you look at when you're 22, you're kind of looking 30 to 40 years out.
Right.
I mean, almost because of life expectancy, you think about that. And maybe you can talk about that, and what you're seeing with some of your clients. And, you know, I'm at that point now, having just retired. How conservative do I get? I've kind of made a decision for myself. I'm not going to give a lot more.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
planning to live until then.
Yeah.
I'm middle-aged now, so I'm looking forward to 130.
Well, I'm glad you consider yourself middle-aged. Yeah.
I have a lot of major things going on this year financially, so I was in touch with my financial person several times.
Okay.
And I turned 80 this year. And my Lisa told me that we are now figuring women who live to 100. She says, so you have 20 years ahead of you at least. Live off what you have. And I had been doing a different calculation, which wasn't really correct. So I keep that in mind. My grandmother was 102, my other was 92, my parents were 85.
Yeah.
Men didn't do as well, but I could easily around for a while, and I
Absolutely.
have that small cows, and I lost a lot this year. Last year.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And you both actually jumped up to the number 8 on there, longevity. And that is becoming, and you hit it right on the head, and you did too, Bill. It's becoming such a big issue, and so many people don't think about that. When Social Security first started in the 30s, the average person, and they set the retirement age back then, almost 100 years ago, they set the retirement age at 65, which is kind of an arbitrary number, 65. But the average life expectancy back then was 72. Okay, so people only, on average, collected Social Security for 7 years. Retired at 65, got the check for 7 years, on average. Obviously, some people look longer, some didn't. But now, when you hit it right ahead, life expectancy is so much longer. It's very easy and common for people who live well into their 90s and 100. A lot of people here, and you mentioned my dad, he was 97. He made it to 97. And my mom made it to 92. And neither of them, their parents, my grandparents, all died in their 60s. One died in his 50s. So in one generation, just in my family, the life expectancy or the longevity increased almost 30 years. Hopefully that doesn't mean I'll live to be 127. I don't like it. But
if you're healthy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if I can still cough and speak.
Yes.
But that is exactly the point, and you both hit it on the head, that you really have to plan your portfolio to continue to generate returns that are going to beat inflation, or at least match inflation. And what that means is, really, you need to stay invested in the stock market. Okay? And as scary as that can be, because of number one, the market risk, it is scary. But what we do to answer, touch on what Bill was saying, is as people get closer to retirement, whenever, some people retire at 60, 55, 65, whatever, gradually you can start reducing some of that market risk in the portfolio. And, then as they get in their 70s and 80s, reduce it further. But even in your 80s, even 90s, I still have clients with substantial portions of the portfolio, and it varies with the person. But, up to half of their portfolio is still in the stock market, for exactly that reason. That they still have to cover their expenses. I've got a mother-in-law who, unfortunately, is in assisted living. She had a stroke almost 9 years ago. And the cost of that assisted living never goes down. I mean, every 6 months we get a rate increase on that. A new company just took over the place and went up another almost $1,000. Fortunately, she was a prodigious saver, and she's getting Social Security, and she was of that generation. She still had a couple of pensions, so her assets are depleting. Got enough for another year or so. But she's now 89. And who would have guessed? That she would have gone through. We would have gone through all of her assets. Just,
you and I have talked about the school market as I've stepped in. One of the things that Mike and I have talked about this in 2 weeks, and I tended to do 10% of God, 10% investment. I want to try and continue to do that in retirement. Mm-hmm. If you can continue to invest with funds what you're living on now. I always like what you told me. When the market's down, you're buying in a bargain.
Right.
Dollar cost average. So maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Gene and I were kind of joking about this. Before we started, my dad started our business, and he was passionate about it. But his one thing was always just keep investing. Just keep buying no matter what's going on. don't take the money out, you know, you're going, like, someone wanted to take money out, I'm just trying to talk about it, especially if the market was down. But yeah, when the market is like now, it's on sale. And we did, you know, January went up a little bit. But yeah, absolutely, long term, you know, it can be scary. You say, you know, you turn on the news and they say, you know, the Dow dropped. Gosh, why would we want to put money in now? But that's really the best time to do it. Absolutely. Okay. So we touched on, last one, foreign. That's just, you know, more and more companies are international, and you have to do, even if you don't want to, or when you're buying virtually any company stock, you're buying some foreign control. So we have the risk of what those foreign currencies are going to do versus the U.S. dollar. You know, what is the euro going to do against the dollar? What's the yen going to do against the dollar? But also, you know, I mean, a big issue right now, I'm not going to get political, but a big issue is China. You know, I mean, and Bill spends a lot of time there. You know, I mean, so many companies rush to invest in China and build factories and businesses there, but I don't know if they're our friend. you know, so, but you almost have to, with any investment, you can have some investment in China.
Sorry, and I'm working part-time for an auto supplier. What I'm seeing is them doing what they call nearshoring because of the China problem, right? And you're probably seeing that in Stellantis. But I'm helping an auto supplier move their stuff nearshore into Mexico, but a whole lot closer, right? Because of all the problems they've had in China with the zero COVID and everything else. I think he hit the nail on the head. I don't know that it's a country to trust me. And I don't know that they ever were, but I think they've become less trustworthy now than all the years I spent going there. I would be nervous about going there today.
Yeah. Well, I know every company that went over there had to share all their technology like day one, like they know their books, you know. And
culturally, that's something, them stealing secrets is not seen as illegal or bad. It's seen as, oh, you did a great job. That's kind of the culture in China. I used to see Cisco equipment. It wasn't from Cisco.
is that right?
It was a knockoff made in China. And Cisco always was having to go after it. And not just Cisco, it would have been other tech companies as well.
Yeah.
But you're right, they have to open their technology. They're experts in reverse engineering.
Any questions on this?
You skipped Verizon.
Oh, did I? Okay. Yeah, so Horizon would really be kind of what we were just talking about. So if someone is going to retire at 65, you know, so starting at like maybe 62, 61, we'll start backing down the risk, the market risk, somewhat, you know. Or if they say, okay, I want to buy a boat, you know, 2 years from now, you know, then you have a specific goal. So that'd be like the time horizon that you would have a specific funding goal. Okay, does that make sense? Any other questions on this? Okay, so on the on market risk, which again is the one that everyone focuses on, I'll go with the green. Michigan State guns.
My daughter's state.
So we always look at, you know, just a spectrum. Okay. So over here would be the most aggressive. Okay. So I'll call that 100%, meaning that
That's not dark enough. You need the dark.
you can't see it. Okay. I'll go back to the black. Is that better?
Black, you need new black.
Is that better?
No, you need a new black one.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe you just picture that. You don't have to draw it.
Let me see if I can get it better.
No, it's okay. So if you think of a spectrum, so one end is extremely aggressive, you put your money in, you have the potential of losing 100% of it, right? Why would you do that? Because if you have that kind of risk, you also have the potential for the best gain, right? But then over at this end would be 0% risk. In other words, you're not going to lose any money. But the trade-off to be at the 0% end is you're going to get a lower yield. You're going to get a lower return. So what would be at the 0% end? It'd be like bank CDs. You're not going to lose on those. FDIC insurance. U.S. Treasuries, theoretically the U.S. government. Now we do have again, I said I'm not going to get the over again. The debt, whether we can raise our national credit card debt limit, that debate's coming up. But theoretically, the U.S. government will never default on its debt. So U.S. Treasuries would be at this end, with 0 risk. And right now, because interest rates have come up, depending on the length that you go, you're going to get 2, 3, 4%, which is not bad. Not bad. I mean, it's certainly better than it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, those were all at 0.1. So not bad, but you're not going to outpace inflation. Okay? That's the risk with that. Why always draw the spectrum? So what's at the other end would be stocks. Obviously, you could put money into what you think is a great corporation, buy their stock, and that company could go bankrupt, and you would have zero. Right? So you could literally lose 100% of your money. But if you pick the right one, you could have huge gains, right? So the secret, if there's a secret with bells, is to diversify. You don't know that. That's in other words, and that goes back to that concentration risk. Don't have it all in one company stock. So if you have 10 companies and one of them goes bankrupt, yeah, you still lost money, but it didn't destroy your portfolio. Okay. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Okay. And I don't even, I would say there's actually some that are even more than 100%. But we're not entirely even talking about those for this experience.
So do you trust a financial advisor to diversify, is not to diversify what we pay as far as investments? Is that?
Yeah, your financial advisor should ask you a series of questions to find out exactly what your goals and objectives are, what your time horizon is, all those risk tolerance, and match the investment portfolio to them as much as possible. And that would be using a variety of investment products, and that's where I'm going to go next. So we talked about stocks. Obviously that's what everyone understands. You buy 100 shares of Kmart or General or something like that. You could also go into like a mutual fund that instantly diversifies all your holdings. So typical mutual fund will have 100 or so different stocks in there. So a little bit less risk as far because you diversify. We go into what's called exchange traded funds, ETFs, which are like mutual funds, but they trade for the course of the day. So a little bit more liquid than a mutual fund. Some mutual funds will have either funding sales charge or surrender charge. So the ETFs are liquid. So you do all that. A little bit more conservative would be like annuities. So annuities would be give you a principal guarantee. Most of them will give you some type of principal guarantee, and they will give you a guaranteed life income. So, does anyone in here still have a pension? Okay, good. Those you're very fortunate. I mean, those are going away. Most companies have done away with their pensions, for new hires. So that's kind of what annuities step in and do, is provide like a pension that you can live on for most folks.
What Bill said, these different funds, they have fund managers.
Yes.
And I think you said sometimes in a call when they talk about the objectives of these funds as a financial advisor. So maybe you can talk about what you do there and how that whole process works with the fund manager and what you as a financial advisor do. And from my perspective, and it's been probably close to 40 years that you and I have a relationship, business relationship. But I remember you telling me about some of those along the way, and that allowed me to do what I needed to do best. I was focused on my job, and I depended on you to look at the market for me. So we can talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we're, our firm is independent. We're not aligned with one particular company. So we represent a lot of different mutual fund companies. So what Bill was talking about, every mutual fund has a fund manager. Sometimes it's a committee, a group of people that manage that fund. And what their job is to select the individual stocks within that portfolio that you're buying. So they really do a lot of work, and most of them have designation called chartered financial analyst. So they really dig into the books of the corporation. Really look at the cash flow and the prospects of that company before they invest in them. And they will actually do sometimes site visits. They'll go out to the company, sit down with the CFO and really dig into this much. So we, as financial advisors, CFP certified, we can occasionally meet with those fund managers, or sometimes we'll have calls and webinars, and they will share what they can, what public information they can about some of those companies. And that to me is really interesting, how in depth they will go in talking to some of these companies. So several years ago, what I think you might be thinking of, Goldman Sachs, they have a series of companies. Well, the Goldman Sachs, one of the fund managers, actually was a U of M BA guy. And he wanted to go for a football game. Well, he incorporated it with visits to academics, and also, what else he went, but he let me tag along on the visit to Carson. But I have to just sit there and not speak anything because I probably wasn't supposed to be there. But it was just amazing the access that they gave him to their corporate folks, really talking about the future of the company and what they were doing. I was just astounded.
And they come in under an NDA, non-disclosure, get that.
Right.
That's how they determine what their portfolio should be and the risk level they're willing to take.
Right.
Exactly. Back then, I was at Ford when VI and Coke signed on with Bryson. I remember being in the locker room at Ford Design Center, and VI Coke was well expected. Some of the guys said, "Hey, did you hear that Coke had just signed on with Bryson? They were actually going on at lunch and they priced their stock because of that."
Yeah.
Just because VI and Coke was signed with.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that I think, they look at, what's the leadership, what's the business.
Right. Yeah, so it is fascinating to hear some of those folks talk about what they're doing and seeing the access that they get to these companies. So when if you do ever watch CNBC or Fox Business or any of those, and you hear about institutional sales, where they sell hundreds of thousands of shares of a company or buy, it's usually the big companies. It's going to be a Fidelity or Goldman Sachs or American Funds, something like that. They've done a site visit, they either fall in love with the company or said, we're going to get out. So you don't see that, but they won't report it right away. I mean, you don't know who did it, usually for once. You know somebody did it. And you just kind of have to guess. But yeah, so we're, me as a financial advisor, that I get comfortable with a few families of funds and know those funds really well. But still, I have to trust them as far as the day-to-day decisions. Are they buying term loans, are they selling term loans? Okay. So, so back to the investment spectrum. Sometimes I'll get people asking about penny stocks. Don't go there. There's a reason for penny stocks. I mean, 1 out of 1,000 you might hit one on, but the rest of it. I would put crypto in that. Some disagree. But I would put that. If you, instead of going to the casino, you can put money, just gamble with some money. But it's not an investment because there's no intrinsic value to it. It's crypto, Bitcoin. If Bill had Bitcoin and wanted to sell it to me, it's only worth $100. There's no intrinsic value to it. Where a share of stock, there is some intrinsic value. You could do the financial analysis and figure out what that value should be. Now, it might be trading above that, it might be trading below that. That's another question. But there is some real value.
And why is that? I don't want to get into crypto and all that, but why is that cryptocurrency?
It became, people got so excited about it, and especially Bitcoin went up in price so fast because people were excited about it, and the internet chat and everything just kept driving up the price. It's proven to be, and for a while people thought that it could actually become international currency, but it's proven to be not effective at that because it's partly because it's not stable. Actually, Ecuador started accepting it as their currency, and it's failing. So again, it's not backed by anybody. It's only worth what someone else is going to give. Where again we can maybe joke and laugh about the U.S. dollar, but it is backed by the U.S. system. So again, theoretically, it can lose value because of inflation, but it's always going to be a dollar. So still to this day, the U.S. dollar is the closest we have to the local currency. The euro is just not there yet. But the rest of the world, less than last year.
Did Bitcoin kind of get its foundation for the all of I know companies were buying to pay off maintenance.
Yeah.
And they literally were almost helping to fund it.
Yeah, because theoretically it's the ownership is hidden, so that it would be a way of encouraging them to progress. Okay. Right, so any question on the spectrum? Right, so then the next thing would be to talk about the types of investments by tax. So the things you're all familiar with, like 401ks, school employees, 403bs, IRAs, those would all be what we call qualified money. Qualified meaning, you see that terminology. Qualified just means that Uncle Sam's never gotten out of it yet. The government has, in return, allowed you to defer the taxation on it. But that's the key term, is the taxation is deferred. At some point, on any of those accounts, IRA, 401k, 403b, pension plans, when that money comes out, you pay tax on it, pay federal income tax. The state of Michigan might be changing that to allow us a few years ago where public pension, may be tax-free, but right now they're taxable. So all that money is going to be taxed. So, at the other end of the spectrum would be tax-free investments, which would be, and we touched on the municipal bonds, buy city of Detroit bond. The interest that they pay is tax-free. Okay? So if you're in a higher income tax bracket, that could be attractive. You know, get that tax-free interest. Roth IRAs come out tax-free. There's a couple of rules you gotta follow, but if you do it right, the money comes out tax-free. So Roth IRAs have become much more, I think, worthwhile investment to look at. I'm saying I'm not gonna I promise I won't. But with the national debt that we have right now, anyone ever go to the website US.com? It's pretty interesting. What is that?
What's it called?
It's I think that's US.com. It'll drive you crazy because it's like a speedometer. It keeps, it was so fast you can't even watch it. But right now, the U.S. debt is in the range of $31 trillion. $31 trillion, which is, if you write that out, that's a lot of zeros and a lot of commas, right? Congressional Budget Office just came out with a report the other day estimating that in the next 10 years, it's going to be over $15 trillion. Another 19 trillion. Yeah, like that. And a lot of that is because of COVID. Government sent out checks to everybody for businesses, everybody. That money is not just free money. I mean, it's the government is writing these checks, and the government is us. We are the government. Right? So we have run up a huge credit card debt in the U.S. Okay, and that's what the debate right now is. Do we raise that credit? I'm saying all that to say that going forward, I believe that income taxes rates are going to happen. Okay. Because we have to pay back. Or, unfortunately, Garett, your generation has to pay back that debt. Yeah. We'll probably be gone. But that debt is cumulative every single day. So yeah, go to that website. It's actually kind of scary. But for that reason, I personally that like Roth IRAs and anything that has tax advantages is going to be much more valuable going forward.
Is that the reason there's a push to maybe convert your 401ks to Roth? And because historically, interest rates or tax rates are very low. When Kim and I first got married, it was kind of Jimmy Carter years. And I can remember we were not making very much combined. But we were already in the 54, 57% tax rate.
Yeah.
And then there was the so-called marriage penalty in the Reagan years and everything else. And things got better. But our tax rates now are historically pretty low. And I think
They're historically.
and that was kind of the premise for 401ks is, you make less in retirement, so your tax rate will be lower. But I'm not sure that's going to be true anymore, given all the stuff.
No, and that, again, that's my personal opinion. But just thinking about it logically, we as a country have this huge debt that you can't just keep letting it go up. Just like your household, you got a debt, you got to pay it off. Ultimately, you can take out a 30-year mortgage, but ultimately you got to pay off that debt. And that's where the country is. So the only way the government raises money is through taxation. So individual corporate taxes, I think, at some point, have got to go up. So to Bill's point, what we do a lot, if if you have IRAs, you have 401ks, you can convert those to Roth IRAs. The catch is, in between there is open savings, so you gotta pay tax today, but then once you get it into the Roth account, it's forever tax-free.
Is there a income limit for Roth IRAs?
There is.
Yeah, and does that ever change? Like, there's an income limit, and if you're over it, you cannot do a Roth IRA.
Right.
Okay.
But you can always do a conversion.
You can do a conversion.
Oh, it's because the government would like to get their hands on that money.
Yeah,
So that's-
yeah, exactly to Bill's point. It's money today to the government. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, if you have an opportunity, it might seem like a bad time, but if you have like a period of unemployment or something where your income might be lower, that would be a good year to do a conversion. Pay the tax that year. But again, I believe tax rates are right now is the lowest in the foreseeable future we're going to see. So I strongly encourage Roth IRAs, more reasons.
And that's something we should look at financial advisor on the individual situation. Right?
So we just had a new tax act passed. It's called Secure 2.0. There was a Secure Act a couple years ago. Some major changes with that will affect you, and mostly positive. One is, are y'all familiar with the required minimum distributions royalties? So years ago, it was at 70.5, where you have an IRA 401k. At 70.5, you have to start taking money out. Well, a couple of years ago with Secure 1.0, it moved to 72. Well, now it's moved to 73, age 73, and then in 2025 it'll go to 75. So that just allows you to delay taking out that money. And the whole point of that R&D, or distribution, is exactly like Bill said, you take the money out and you pay tax. Yeah. So that will be an opportunity, but it's also potentially a risk because how those R&Ds work is basically life expectancy. So that means that your R&D, if you wait until 75, for example, it's going to be a much higher number each year. Okay. So
You can look at it as a raise. You're going to get a raise in 75, a raise from 73.
Potentially be in a higher tax bracket too.
You might also be leaving it to your heirs.
Yeah.
So your kids might get it.
Yeah.
Wait too long.
Right.
So it depends if you want to do that or go. My cousin's daughter used to joke about, are you going skiing? My cousin said, skiing? Yeah, spending your kids' inheritance.
Exactly. So on that point, that kind of brings up, so what are the best assets to leave the next generation? I get that question a lot. So absolutely the worst asset would be your IRA. Because if and when Bill passes away and Derek gets the money, if it's all IRA money, he's going to be paying tax on all the money. Not a horrible problem to have to get the money, but you have to pay tax on it. So the best assets would be, again, something tax free. So a Roth IRA, obviously life insurance comes in tax free. So that again is part of the planning that the advisor would help you. So Bill asked me also to talk about a couple of charitable giving strategies that are, I think, pretty creative. I certainly didn't train them, but we use them quite a bit. One, the traditional way, Bill and I grew up in the same church. So, you get used to tithing, we write our check every week. That's normal way we always did it. But obviously, you gotta have that money in your checking account. So one thing that we've been doing a lot in the last few years, because a lot of stocks have appreciated in value a lot, even though they may be down a little bit right now. So let's just say I was smart enough in 1993 to buy 100 shares of Home Depot. I wasn't, but let's pretend I was. Wish I was. So Home Depot stock 1993, 30 years ago, was right around $10 a share. Okay. I didn't see what it closed at yesterday. Now it's right around $3.20 a share. $3.20. So let's say I bought 100 shares. So 30 years ago, 100 shares makes $1,000 that I would have invested in them, right? If I wanted to sell those, if I wanted all those 30 years and sell them today, I'd sell them for $31,000. So what happens then if I sell them? I'm gonna say I'm just wait at it. I haven't paid tax on that gain all those years. Okay. Stocks have that ability to defer the capital gains treatment, so you actually dispose of the asset. So I sell it today and get 31,000 shares. Uncle Sam's going to say, wait a minute, we got to pay capital gains tax on that $30,000 profit. And capital gains tax is for most of it 50%. So I pay $4,500 in tax if I sold it. But so if I wanted to donate that money to my church, and I sold that stock, I pay $4,500 in capital gains tax, then I write the check. Church is going to be happy either way, right? But what if I just donated the stock to the church? You said, here, you take 100 shares of Home Depot stock. Now, the church has to have a brokerage, to accept that shares. So, for me, as the person donating it, I would get the tax deduction for that full $31,000. Right? I don't have to pay tax on any of that gain. It's wiped out, essentially. The church, and it should, around that day, and sell that stock, get $31,000. Being a nonprofit, you don't pay tax on $31,000. So it's one of the biggest secrets of the tax code. And a lot of people are sitting on appreciated stock. So it's absolutely a better way to donate to any charity than just writing a check.
There's another thing that this does, especially when you get into retirement years and you start thinking out Medicare B and D, which is like Medicare Advantage is a lot of people get, so on top of Medicare B, and then Medicare D is the prescription. I happen to know about it because I just got there. What happens is, especially as you get towards the end of your career working, you're making this much money, you step into retirement, and you're making this much money. The government typically has your records from a year and a half to 2 years ago. They're thinking you're making this much money. And what happens if you make over certain amounts, you will pay not only Medicare Part B, but you can pay double based on what you were making a year and a half ago. There's a form called Social Security Form 44. You can go and plead your case and say, I don't want to pay that surcharge, which he doesn't. And by donating that way, it doesn't count as income. So in the years when you're retiring, your income doesn't show up on your 1040. So you can stay below a level to not pay the extra for Medicare B and D. So there's an advantage there as well, especially when you step into retirement, not to be paying that surcharge. And by the way, if you don't take B because you're Medicare Advantage covers drugs, you still pay the surcharge for Medicare D. And then if you ever go back and need Medicare D, they're gonna charge you a penalty for not having to take it up front. So kind of scary that they're talking about taking Medicare Advantage, so that could start with 1% per month penalty down the road. But I'm rolling that dice right now. I hate paying twice for the same benefit. But keep in mind that not only there's this advantage that you can give that way and not pay taxes and the church benefits you benefit, there's a secondary benefit to you when it comes to your medical coverage. When you reach 65.
Boy, per month.
Yes, yes.
They have those additions.
That's right.
Per month.
And I forget what that's, but it is earlier.
Can you touch on like Fidelity Charitable or donor advised funds that might make it easier so that if you don't have to worry about some other, let's say, in addition to your church, you want to donate to Focus on the Family or your local Brethren Interfaith Pantry? It makes it so much simpler.
Yeah.
And because you can utilize, as you said, appreciated securities, but you don't have to worry about the organization having brokerage accounts and trying to distribute maybe 10 shares or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Fidelity, and there's a few other companies that have what they call donor advised funds. You see that. But it's exactly that. You as a individual you can put cash in it, but you can also put in an appreciated stock. So in that example, I use, I give my Home Depot stock to them, and then I can, this is called donor advised, I can say, okay, I want it to send to this charity, this charity, this charity. So that can be, it can simplify the process that, now with the church, if they don't have to go to the account, just like an investment.
And if you were dividing it up amongst charities,
Yeah.
say how much at a dollar figure, and then would sell a fraction of stocks to match that.
Okay.
DAF is called.
Donor advisors. And if it's a very large amount, then it might make sense to you could set up your own foundation, or you can set up. I think Jeff had it in his house. Charitable trust, where you can put your assets into a charitable trust. It can either be, they all have funny initials like Brad, and all that, but so a charitable remainder trust. So in other words, you can even put like your home into a charitable trust. You can live in your home, which sounds pretty generous. But then there's a time. So a charitable remainder trust, CRT, you could live in the home for like 10 years or 20 years, depending on how long you say, reduces your tax deduction. Okay? But then at the end of let's say you go 20 years, at the end of 20 years, that home or whatever asset you put in there goes to charity. But you get the tax deductions today when you set it up. So again, it can be about planning. Those are, obviously you really got to think about those when you do them, but they can make a lot of sense. So another thing we've done a lot lately, last few years, is the IRS now allows what's called a qualified charitable contribution. And it's still set, it's based on the R&D age of 7.5. They still use that 7.5 even though they're raising R&D age. But what that means is, if you have a lot of money in this 401k with IRA, and remember I just said it's like the worst asset to people with kids, right? If that's what it is. So you can do up to $100,000 a year, and it will satisfy your R&D. You can have that money go directly to a charity from your IRA. Not all 401ks will do it together. the custodian has to be equipped to do it. But, therefore, so, again, let's say you've got, $1 million in your 401k. One way you do, you can roll it to an IRA, but 100,000 up to 100,000 a year, you can donate to, again, one charity or multiple charities. And the money goes directly from, let's say it's Fidelity, directly from Fidelity to the church. So you don't. So what's the advantage of that? Number one, you don't have something because it's term nothing. Number two, this bill was just saying it avoids the Medicare. So,
What was that called?
qualified charitable benefits, 800,000 a year.
Big question.
Yeah.
Because, is there an age at which you can do that, transfer? Do you have to be a certain age before you transfer?
The one I just talked about? Yeah, it's 70 and a half.
So 70.
Okay. Yeah, so I hate to admit it, but I'm going to be 69 next month. So I'm actually there might not be a lot of advantages to turning 70, but starting next year, so it's a year that you turn 70. So literally next January, I can do this.
So that's the minimum. It's not like the 59 and a half for 401ks. To do this, you have to be 70.
70. The year you turn 70.
Okay. Oh, in the year.
Yeah, so I'll
So
turn.
the beginning of the year.
Yeah, so I'm turning 69 next month, so I'll be 70 in January. So
Okay.
I'll turn 70, yeah.
September. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's another way to, obviously do good, being a nice contribution in the most tax efficient manner for yourself. And again, those assets are assets that certainly my kids wouldn't complain about getting, but they're worse assets to get
So,
tax rates.
so those, the two things that we just discussed would be good when we're in a situation where with the revised tax code, we can no longer itemize, so therefore we're not giving
Correct.
our charitable donations,
Exactly right.
and then they took away that few $100s they gave me the last couple of years, and took that away in 22 also. So-
Exactly. That's a good point.
So the first one, is there an age limit on it?
No, charitable. I can do that.
What one doesn't have the age of the donor advice fund?
No, the lady appreciated securities, has no age.
Oh, okay. Appreciate security.
And that would be
And it-
mutual funds.
we always talk about stock, but it really could be any asset. So let's say you own a investment property, office building, do the same thing. But whether the donor advice fund, but you could donate that to church fund, to the exact same price.
Just so so the donor advice, I'm 65, I'll be 66 this year. So if I set up a donor advice fund, I can give from that to avoid taxes at my age.
Yeah.
It's the stock you donated during the
No, the 7.5 would be for using qualified money. So your IRA.
Okay, the IRA, well, is that for 403B?
Yeah, 403B.
Okay.
Right.
If I guess if I were to set up like a donor advice fund, my husband and I now, we can donate to the church or to pay for whatever.
Yes.
If we tax it, you don't have to choose something.
Right, you get a tax deduction. Subject to that.
I think I know that. I worked in a nonprofit for 32 years and I worked in the fundraising department. So we had, a ton of our parents had donor advice funds.
Yeah.
But and I understand now why they had them. Obviously, they have a lot of
Yeah.
resources to work with, and they also have good tax advisors who told them to set it up that way.
That makes a lot of sense.
So, yeah.
We've got a few more minutes, but, yeah, a lot of, charities that I've been getting mails from want you to set up a charitable annuity. Can you touch on those, how they work, and is it, like, that I made the beneficiaries of the charitable, like Fidelity Charitable? Could you touch on those,
It would,
and how that works?
yeah,
So,
yeah, so what Mike is asking about, a lot of charities, National Wildlife Fund, whatever, will offer you to give them money, and they create their own annuity instead of, you buying an annuity from an insurance company, right? So what that means is they will start paying you, they're usually pretty good rates. I've looked at a few of them, usually depends on your range, 6 or 7%. So in other words, they would start, yeah, so it can be higher. They will pay you an income for, as long as you live, that's what an annuity does. So as long as you live, you get this check back from whatever charity you wrote it to. But then at the end, they have all so they're kind of banking. They're kind of banking on you not living a long time. That's what they do better.
That annuity they pay you is still tax. It's still income.
Yes.
tax. Where's the deduction, the principal that you donate to them?
Yeah, you'll get a deduction immediately when you put money in.
But then it's income.
But it's reduced based upon, so let's say you put 100,000 in, you're not gonna get 100,000 deduction. It's gonna be reduced by the actuarial value of your life expectancy and the income stream. Which, I'm not gonna do that calculation for you right now. But it, just, ballpark number, if you put 100,000 in, you're probably gonna get like 60,000 deduction.
But I could come to you and just buy a charitable annuity.
Yeah, we could do, and probably get a better return. So it would depend on what you want to do. So you could set up an annuity that would pay you for as long as you live, and then again have the remainder go to the charity, right? Or if you didn't want the income, have the annuity payouts go to the charity. And if you did that, then you would get a deduction. Yeah. So another thing we do quite a bit, and that actually comes quite a bit with Michigan State, is use life insurance for charitable gifts. So and I've done it personally. So to make, we used to joke, get the football tickets, and we always say, well, if we like the football tickets, we got to go to Anna. So they have like everything, they have different giving plus as well. Well, I wasn't ready to buy a big check to Michigan State. Just wasn't happening. But, I figured I could buy an insurance policy and just pay an annual premium. So MSU Foundation is the owner and beneficiary of that policy. So, hopefully not, with that truck that's on my home today, MSU will get $250,000. Okay? But I'm only paying $3,000. So I get a tax deduction for that $3,000 because I write a check to MSU Foundation. So I get a tax deduction for that $3,000. But someday they're going to take $20,000. So what's that give me at this but you could do that with an you could do it for the church, you could do it for any church. The argument against that you get from the giving people at the university is they say, well, we'd rather have the money today. They'd rather be writing $3,000 just to the general fund, rather than, in this case, it was John Hancock. I said, well, you got a choice. But you as the donor obviously have a choice. I mean,
You're in the driver's seat.
right, yeah, so I personally like that. I've done that with a lot of clients, with not just Mission City, a lot of charities. It's a way for them to give a lot more money, because that's the nature of life insurance. You're being relatively low premium. Hopefully you can pay it for a long time, but obviously. So those are some good, charitable giving strategies, a little bit different than, just running your check each week or each month. Okay, any questions on those? Okay, we could spend another hour talking about Social Security.
Can you do a 5 or 10 minute summary? We'll wrap up.
Yeah, well, it kind of combined, because I just had clients in my office last night, and we had this ended up being over an hour conversation. So the big debate, how Social Security works, you can take it as early as 62, or you can wait till you're 70. And I have always been of the school of thought, if you can wait till age 70, because it literally goes up, benefit goes up 8% a year. So if you, in fact, the kids, in fact, there's a chart that shows in there, even waiting, so my, they changed full retirement. So my full retirement age was 66, 69, so I have to take it again, because it's still going up. So between 66 and 70, my benefit increases by like 37%. So that's always been my argument. Again, I'm kind of a money guy. So I'm like, okay, if I can afford to wait, obviously I'm still working, so I can afford to wait until like 70 to take that up. But what's really, I'm going to give you a full summary argument. What's really hit me lately is there's a second sheet in there for these right side of Social Security. Where I'm looking, that chart on the lower right shows how the benefit goes up each year. So it absolutely does pay the way. But the question is, and it's a huge question, I don't have the answer, is, again, the Congressional Budget Office came out with a report last week, and you've all heard these numbers, but the conservative projection right now is the Social Security Trust Fund will be insolvent in 2030. So 10 years. Okay, so have I been smart to wait? Or should I have taken Social Security a few years ago and started making that money?
You said it being black.
Insolvent. So how Social Security works, and almost like a Ponzi scheme in a way, but it's not exactly. But
It's not because it's the government.
it's the government. Right. So, as you all know, as you're working, FICA comes out, right? So we're all working, paying FICA taxes through our whole lifetime. Your employer matches your FICA tax, so it's really double what you're putting in. So all this money has been going into Social Security for almost since 1935, started, right? So, but if you look at the population, those baby boomers, we're all starting to retire now, starting to go off Social Security. And the benefits, those are also big. So just last month, they went up 8.7% Social Security. The year before it went up 5%. So all those factors combined, all these additional people retiring, drawing benefits, and the benefits going up, there's more money going out of Social Security Trust Fund than coming in. It's been a negative cash flow for several years, which is not good for anyone. It's not good for households, it's not good for business obviously. So, but the trust fund was huge. I mean, it was trillions of dollars. but it's legal. It's fewer people are working, putting money in, more people are drawing money out. So this big bucket of money is slowly going down. So the law, as it reads right now, is when there's no more money in that bucket, they have to, Social Security Administration has to reduce benefits to match whatever's coming in. So the current projection is benefits will go down like 25%. 2033. So again, am I going to start to wait? You know, if 10 years from now my benefits go down by 25%, you know, I'm going to have to get a calculator out and figure it out. I might be better off than start taking 6 years at 62 and just take the money in the bank and do it okay. You know, I don't know. And the problem is, I keep saying I'm not going to get political, but neither, I'll play both parties, neither party has been willing to step into that. They call it the third rail, you know, no one's willing to touch this here. But it absolutely, the Social Security system needs some major surgery to get fixed, otherwise it's, you know, sorry, Garett, but you're helping the fund out all its own folks.
One of the things I think you need to think about, and one of the considerations, because I did this with my dad, and my dad passed away 32 years ago. But he asked me, he said, should I take it at 62 or should I take it at 65? And I did a break-even point. I said, Dad, you'll be 74 and some odd months old when this breaks even. So I said, I would suggest taking it at 62. Plus, you kind of need the income now. Some people need the income. My dad passed away at 64 and he'd not taken any and waited until 65. He had never seen a dime. My mom was 6 years younger than my dad. So the day he died, April 29th, they had to send the last Social Security check back. My mom was only 58. She had to wait 2 more years before she could do it. So she was living on about $3,000 a year at that point because his pension got cut back. Now she had to pay for medical because of Michigan dollar. The good news is she had a paid off house in Redford with taxes of $900 a year. So that was the saving grace. So everybody's situation is different. And Social Security was meant to be 1/3 of your income in retirement. It's supposed to be pension, 1/3, and your own savings, 1/3. A lot of these companies aren't offering pension. So we've got these portable 401ks that the younger folks like Derek are get involved in. And so it's financial picture is not great, but if you're a saver, it really helps.
Yeah.
So I think all those come into the question, should I take it earlier or later?
Yeah, so it's really started to change my thinking somewhat, or at least be open to looking at every yeah, and the problem with Social Security, like Bill just said, I mean, it was designed to be 1/3, it's like it in school, right? Now, today, the statistics are over 50% of recipients, it's the vast majority of them live in Social Security, 50%. So, if those benefits are reduced 25%, it's going to be devastating. It's going to be devastating to a huge segment of our population. So, I truly can't imagine that Congress will figure this out.
But it does reinforce.
I'm afraid that there'll be somebody from each party that is say, come on, we gotta have a bipartisan solution. But I mean, what's got to happen to fix it? You know, you've got to raise FICA taxes, which obviously not popular. Or they're going to have to increase the full retirement age again. You know, like I said, mine's 66. I don't know what after 1960 was
62 months and
67.
6 and 4 months, yeah.
Yeah, so they might, yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
you know, but if they raise it to 69 or 70, you know, that's gonna, make people wait longer to get a full benefit.
Or they might choose another way to fund it, which again are higher taxes that we talked about earlier. And they're gonna tax the higher income people, most likely, although you never know about the high income people that make rules, that will make it in their favor, but what'll happen is that higher income is much more likely to get taxed, which is reinforces maybe getting to a Roth IRA is not a bad idea.
Right.
For the second person. Or at least a larger percentage, because you're subject to how much you can go. So, right, just things to think about, looking at everything that's going on in our country.
Yeah, so I've gotten software that actually will calculate like the optimal time for a single person or a couple to take Social Security. So again, in my case, it was for me, wait to 70, my wife take it at 60. But now, I think benefits are going down, 25% 10 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm almost there anyway, so it's kind of too late for me.
Yeah, and somebody said once too, look at how you plan to use that money in retirement. Are you gonna wanna take that money at, let's say, 65 and then do your trips, buy your boat, or do stuff like that, versus waiting to get a higher amount of income when you're less mobile?
Right.
And things
That's
like
how
that.
they do
Right,
things,
you know.
like take trips.
Yeah.
The other thing to look at is, in the case of couples, what Kim and I did is, statistically, I'm gonna guide you pushing statistics. She raised kids for 16 years, so the amount of Social Security she would get was less than me. So what game we played was, let me take longer to get my Social Security, because if I were to go first, she's gonna get my higher amount of Social Security. So that allowed hers to grow a little bit longer and be a little bit more while we're both alive. So we played that. So, and actually, Randy talked we got time for, it's 11:30, there's another question. I don't want to cut it short.
Okay, I am gonna give you everyone one piece of homework. And this is one of the single biggest mistakes or things that people want to see every day. So when you get home, and there's on the one side of there's some sheets you can use to make. But go through every account you have, wherever it is, write it down. But review it for who your beneficiary designation is. And I see this all the time. This is when I get a new client, this is one of the first things we do. I see it all the time where the beneficiary is an ex-spouse, a big divorce. I've seen it where someone bought a life insurance policy when they had the first kid, meaning that kid is contingent beneficiary, then they had 2 more kids. So they effectively disinherited the second 2 kids. So check his information.
He's good.
But it's a simple thing to do, but it's really, really important to do. And I say do it once a year. Just takes a few minutes. And if it's not up to date, obviously we can change. And this would bring in back what Jeff was talking about last week. I'm a huge believer in everybody should create a multi-living trust. Absolutely. And it's not based on what your net worth is. It's a matter of making your estate simple for your next generation. With a living trust, you avoid probate. Has anyone ever gone through probate? How much fun was that?
It wasn't bad, but it could have been easier. And it cost more money. Right? I mean, Jeff talked about it last week, right?
Yeah.
Trust and stuff.
Yeah, so I just interpreted his 2 hours and really that's key takeaways. Every attorney, if they create the revocable living trust for you, they'll also do acts, goodwill, living will. So it's very important. And then once you do it, then go back and change the beneficiary accounts. It depends on what type of account you're talking about, but change the beneficiary to the trust and or the owner. You know, so like non-qualified accounts, you actually make a trustee of like your bank account.
So it's kind of a two-step process. Get the trust and then put all your assets in the trust.
Right. So that's your homework. Go and check your beneficiaries.
And Kim and I have had the misfortune of losing a child. And so working with Randy, all our IRAs, we went from a third each to 50% for use of our sons. So I don't know what would have happened if we had never changed that. And Alyssa's name was still there at 33%. So it's really important to do that. Please make sure you look at those kinds of things. Right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's we just close in prayer here. There's a little bit of food left. Take it with you if you want. Appreciate everybody coming out. I'm hoping you're finding this series that we've done beneficial. We'll have the video out there. James didn't get the other one from last week up yet. He didn't give me a link to it anyway. Maybe you guys just need to send it away. But eventually we'll have them all on our church website. So you can pick what session, you can look at them at the time in the future. So my son has been doing the recording for us. And again, thank you for coming out and
Just remind everybody 2 weeks.
thank you.
Because
We have the ABC Michigan Men's Breakfast is here next week, so we took a break next week, and we'll be back at Cross Point Meadows. Remember, you have to come in off the 13-mile road because of the construction of Meadow Brook. But we'll be there in 2 weeks. Mike and I will be leading that session, mostly Mike. He's the financial wizard. I just like to be a sponge and learn off these guys. Again, thanks for coming, and hope you enjoy this in 2 weeks. And then we're going to take a month off, and we'll wrap this up on April 1st when Dr. Jim Garett will be here to talk about him and life strategies. And I think you'll find that interesting. So that's probably good. Heavenly Father, thank you for Randy and his experience and knowledge that he's brought to help us understand how we can be better stewards of your money. We want to do that. We want to make sure that we give to you. We want to make sure that we care for ourselves. And that in doing so, we can help care for others around us. Giving and giving their money to you so that you can do your work through them. We ask, Lord, your blessing on each and every person here today. We ask your oversight as they make their way home today. And please help us to discern and understand everything that is in front of us today and for value in the future and to your honor. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.